Hey Randy, how are
Hey,
you?
good you?
Good, good. Thanks for coming on like always. The second Monday of every month, we do on the flip side, and we love to talk about money and finances. So today's quote of the day is, or actually, I don't know why I'm getting so quick in advance, but anyways, I feel like I'm going super quick on things, but there's no rush or
There's
anything.
no
But our
rush.
quote of the day is every decision you make in business has a financial consequence. So, what are your ideas on that? What do you think of that quote?
Yeah, off the top, I would say, you know, there is a lot of things that we do in our lives that, we can just go through, maybe no direct impact, but because our finances are so important and business is so important, that every business decision that we make is going to affect our finances for the good or for the bad, and it's very important that we do make great business decisions because it can make or break you essentially.
100%. And actually, even not thinking of business, to be honest, like even in personal, you don't realize like the decisions that you make will still impact your finances. For example, just like simple things. For example, I would say if you're not if you're like feeling lazy, for example, you don't do anything all day, like if if you're not thinking on how to improve yourself, how to run your business, like your job, like improving your, like if you're working, like how to become better at it to, let's say, level up, whatever it is. I
Hmm.
mean, those things technically impact you because you're stopping yourself from getting raises, you're stopping from yourself from get making more money in your business or whatever it is, right? Because anything we do, it's not as if we're gonna see it tomorrow or always. Like it's like these little baby steps we have to take to get to whatever our goals are. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's in personal. If you're not in your personal life, if you're not making good decisions that will affect your business life, you're definitely going to suffer from that, for sure.
Yeah, so it's definitely, I feel like a juggling act. You definitely want to. I mean, I feel like if you're starting a business in general, again, there are people that maybe don't make good business decisions, but in general, I mean, at least you're in the right track, right? But
Mhm.
I think even in personal or just finances, for example, finances, I think are, something that even I think maybe some people may not think about it because let's say they're not running a business or maybe just keeping a blind eye to it. And it's things that you have to think about, like even contingency monies and things like that, like just having the plan, right? So you're not living day by day or spending money that could have gone to better places.
Right. Yeah. You know what? That makes me want to almost say it little bit differently, because not everybody has a business, right? So not everyone's making business decisions every day, but every financial decision that you make can affect you yourself as if you were a business.
Mhm.
If you can wrap it that way, because you know, just a simple decision like, hey, I am going to sign up for Netflix or Disney Plus, right now is a a life is a commitment to, you know, the to spending every month, right? And that essentially, if you consider yourself, whether you're self-employed or whether you have a job, that almost is a business decision if you want to look at it that way, right?
Yeah, that's true too. Because it's
Mhm.
just you want to think of, like, I think Netflix actually or watching TV is a good example because even in personal or in business, you just think about, is this cost really, for example, worth it?
Right.
Like, is me watching TV worth it? Or, for example, let's say if you're just talking recreationally, would I
Right.
prefer actually spending that money to my sports, my health, my my friends, like actually being a little more social instead of just watching TV, let's say, or same thing in business, like should I should I use this for my business instead or whatever, so questioning your financial decisions and kind of like depending on who you are, deciding what should I do with this and
Right.
is this a good decision is probably a good first start.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes we don't think about like, our spending. Like for example, everyone goes to the mall, right? And some people are shoppers, some people are not. But the moment you decide to, buy a pair of jeans, or something, it's it's an expense,
Hmm.
right? And people have to kind of look at it that way. Every
Hmm.
time you buy something, I mean, I do. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you straight up. Anything I spend, I have to think about it before I do it, right?
Yeah.
And some people are just very impulsive with it. They just spend because, and it's just habitual. But
Hmm.
for me, whether it is choosing steak or chicken for the day at that meal, to me, it's a financial decision, right? And we have
100%.
to be more conscious of the things that we decide to spend on in business and in personal.
100%, completely agree. And I think having that attachment is very important, right? To all your decisions and thinking of the money, because you think that, no, like you don't think about money, or a lot of people don't like to think about the money aspect, even, and we're also not saying to the viewers, for example, like you can't have fun, you can't spend money, because definitely if you have wins and stuff, I mean, I'm definitely an advocate of like play hard. What is it like? Work hard, play hard. I'm
Right,
definitely good, definitely an advocate of like you. If you also do good, if you also achieve your goals, definitely do something for yourself because you want to. But it's
right,
just again thinking about it, right? Making the plan like that. For example, like this is my goal. Once I achieve this, I'm gonna get this. Just thinking about it and understanding that money is always involved in any decision, right? Because if you decide to lay and watch TV all day, there is a financial consequence to that, right? And we need to be aware that it is important because a lot of people kind of want to keep a blind eye because it's like, oh, money is complicated or like I'm having money issues, so it's just going to stress me out more. Like all these
right.
kind of questions come up for people who just don't want to think about it. And it's like I think it's if anything is better is if you think about it, it becomes less stressful because then you start more of the planning process and not the survival process of something happening and you're like, I don't know what to do. How do I fix the situation?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And what's worse is that people tend, especially people that have jobs, right, and work 9 to 5, they always, because they're so sure that that money is coming in every 2 weeks, they will overspend or spend on things that they shouldn't have. Like, you know what? I'll splurge on this today because guess what? On Friday is payday and I'm gonna have more money, right? We don't appreciate how adding a little bit here will eventually just give you enough more freedom to kind of make better decisions. But it's something that we always have to think about.
100%. And it's like, yeah, like I think I just want to reiterate one more time. You should think about it and I feel like the stress goes away for those because I know there's people who stress. I was gonna say like my husband specifically, like he hates talking about money, but I think it's because he doesn't plan it and think about it. So it just
Mhm.
makes it stressful because he's usually in that point of like, oh my God, now I need to figure out this instead of, oh, this is happening, but I have contingency money, or oh, this is happening, but it's already planned for, and then kind of like the stress gets reduced. And, like fine, you'll always have surprises and stuff, but as they come, you learn from it. Okay, this situation happened. I don't want it to happen again. So, you know what, for next time, I'm going to probably start like budgeting this or taking care of this or looking into this so that next time is not a stressful situation like it was, let's say, this time, So also just learning from your what happens.
Mhm. Definitely.
And I just want to tell people again, we always love to hear your comments. So if you guys have, because again, we are always giving you guys our opinions. So we would love to hear your opinions because we are obviously open minded and we're not right. And you guys may tell us something that that we may not know or that we may not think about, or even ask us questions. We're always here to, give our opinions and hear you guys out and hear what you guys have to say, because we're all learning from each other. So I just wanted to also put that out there too.
Definitely.
And so, talking about finances, last week you spoke about that you found private lending to be an interesting strategy to start looking at right now. And so, I wanted to first get your input. So now we're gonna just talk about private lending. So for those people that maybe want to do something with their money, we'll talk about that. So I was just curious on what exactly made you think of why should we get into private lending? Let's say right now with the situation that's going on, like what is your thought process to wanting to get more into private lending?
Okay. Yeah. So I think private lending is something that would be smart to get into in this current climate. And the current climate is inflation rates are going to get are rising. Banks are going to be tightening. All of that, all of that stuff, right? So we went through like a huge growth period, right? Maybe you only had one home, right? And that's your nest egg, right? And you I mean, you can't sell it unless you don't want to own that house anymore. But if you're living it, it's not like, and I wouldn't recommend buying a second property right now in the peak market because I feel that we might be going into a little bit either a sideways, a little bit of a correction. That's just my opinion, right? So take that with a grain of salt. Now, you either have savings or you have crazy amount of equity right now if you've held your home, right? And people are going to be finding it hard to find money out there. It's going to be a little bit more tougher, right? Especially because the deals are going to be harder to find and margins are going to be tight, right? So if you want to cash flow, there's going to be always people who are looking for money, and you're going to be an alternate source to the banks and to the B lenders or whatever the case may be. And now, if you want to get into that lending space, I think there's going to be a high demand for it, and it's a good way to make money in an environment where maybe the growth now is going to be harder to find, right? In assets in terms of equity, right? So if
Mhm.
you want to continue to get some good cash flow and earn money, right, that's the reason why I think now would be a great time to get into private lending.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great to know. And I want to also add to that
I think you
actually.
paused it
Oh, sorry, did you get cut out? Can you
a
hear
little
me?
bit. I can hear you now, I think, if you
Okay.
speak.
I think we have a bit of delay, but we're going to continue trying to go forward and see if we can make it still happen. I just wanted to also put my side of it, um, as to why I think private lending is good and also could be a potential good strategy for people right now. So the other reason, because I feel like also making sure that people understand that it's not a contradiction, right? Because, for example, private lending, but the market is not good, right? And then it's like, but who's going to be, buying the properties or whatever? So the reason why I think it's also good to do private lending is because, um, like especially if you're a real estate investor, it's a lot harder. Like I've been noticing, and I think Randy, you've probably been noticing that it's very hard to find good deals right now. Like I am looking for a lot more deals than I was before. I felt like it was a lot easier before to find deals, and now it's just like, oh my god, like when is my next flip gonna come? I've already looked at probably 30, and like I just can't find one. So I think, but there are good deals out there. The only thing is, um like with private lending, I feel like another safe way is that you can find the people that get those really good deals, right? Because for example, not everyone's going to find good deals, or those deals are getting a little scarce at the moment, right? And so in private lending, you have that opportunity to actually make sure that you can actually find, like if a deal comes to you, a private lend, for example, If it looks like an awesome slam dunk deal or a really good deal, you can lend to it, right? And then so if you're even an active investor and you're struggling to find deals, you also kind of have that opportunity, right? Because if you don't find a deal and maybe it's been a while and you're like, but I need to put it in somewhere, you also can have that other avenue to just kind of, okay, let me look at other people's deals, because why not partner with other people that maybe have good deals? So I just wanted to also add that just in case,
Mhm.
because I feel like sometimes people may be like, but you're lending to people, but you're not finding good deals. And so I feel like that's a good reason to also want to private lend, because you have more opportunities of finding those good deals through someone else and still being a part of it without actually, with it being a passive type of investment.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it's contradictory because you have to put money to work, period. No matter what cycle, no matter what cycle that you're in, right? And when when you position yourself in a way, right, by being part of networks and talking to people, people always want money, right?
Mhm.
And your choice whether you want to lend it onto real estate, security real estate, or other things. I don't want to get into that, right? But because everything has their own risks, right?
Mhm.
But there's always going to be a need for cash. Um,
100%.
someone else's need for your cash, right? And it's up to you to come up with your criteria, what you want to lend on, in all your terms, right? So I'm not going to say, hey, just be lending out there on anyone that has says that they have a good deal, right? You have to be able to get yourself in a position where you can analyze the deal and make it make sense to you and to your criteria. I know, Diana, you do some private lending, right? And I know maybe some people have never done it before, and they were like, okay, well, great, you guys are talking about private lending, and that it's a good time right now. Like, how do I really start, right?
Mhm.
Um, can are you would you be able to kind of help maybe guide someone who is new right now getting into that space? You think?
Yeah, yeah, we can definitely talk about it. I can definitely give you my points of view on how to go by it, especially, for example, if someone is new. So, like that, you can, I'll start with that first question, but you can continue asking me like of what you think someone that is new at it would ask, and then I can definitely answer those questions. So I'll
Okay.
start with the first one, which was, if you're new, just even how to get started, right?
Right.
So when you need a mortgage broker, so having a mortgage broker is very important because they'll give you some guidance, but also I would say you do want to learn and understand what it is, because I mean, you will always I feel like when you're using your own money, you're the best steward of your own money and you will make the best decisions for yourself with obviously the guidance of a mortgage broker. Because I do notice that some people, let's say, will just use a mortgage broker, and they don't really look into it that much. And I personally think you should still, you know, look into it. Like it can be very high level, but like make sure you have the right questions, or not make sure you have the right questions, but ask questions, that you can probe and make sure you understand why they are, telling you about this deal and what they think is really good about this deal. And for example, understanding like what are the risks if that specific deal doesn't happen. So I think that'd be
Right.
like the very first good step to go with, like to actually learn about private lending.
Right. And I will just add to that that you don't, if people are wondering what source of their cash they can use to private lend, I would say it's anything from straight up cash in a savings account, your equity, home equity line of credit. You put some equity on there, just now it's sitting, you don't know what to do with it. A lot of people have RRSPs, right? And that might be a broader topic for a later time, but you can also lend your RRSPs without the tax implications of taking it out, right?
And even your tax-free savings, actually, you can also even use that, or your liras. If you have liras, also the same. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of different types of money that you can lend. So it's definitely like you want to, put on those glasses and start looking for all your money, because a lot of us don't realize how much money we have. And we think, and especially with these last couple years, like, and you were alluding to this before, right? That the market has gone up. So you guys have, everyone has, whoever owns a house has a lot of money, right? And it's just like you want to be able to pull that out. And like Randy said, you can do that with a HELOC, for example, or even a mortgage. But I feel like if you're going into a mortgage, you're probably a little bit more sophisticated because you're obviously getting more interest. You're getting like consistent interest. And so you want to make sure that money's always working for you. At least with a HELOC, it goes in and out, in and out. So once you don't, like, once your private land comes back, you're putting it back in. When you find it, you put it back out, and you're kind of taking it in and out as it works. So um, I feel like those are also different things to think about too when it comes to the different kind of money. But yeah, definitely find your money, because you guys have a lot of money that you don't know about.
Um, Also, what are the areas on a land where you make money? What's the profit centers on a land? If I lend you money, how can I make money? Is just
So
interest?
just there's yeah, you can do it through interest. And also, just as a caveat, if for example you have a HELOC, also make sure that your interest that you're wanting is more than in the interest you're owning on the HELOC, because also sometimes people don't think of that. So make sure that you know actually how much profits you're making from it, right? Because if you have expenses, you want to make sure those expenses are taken off, and on top of that, you're making your profits.
Right.
um, I forgot your question.
Okay, so you're gonna be making money off of the interest, right? And what Diana's saying is that, if your HELOC is your bank is charging you 4% when you use that money, make sure you're charging more than 4% when you lend it out. That way you're not, borrowing it at 4 and then lending it at 3 and then you're losing a percentage, right? So
Oh yeah, and the other one, now I remembered the question. And then so the other way, another other people, it's also, this is actually for risk too, but also usually people put an upfront lender fee in there. So that's more of a risk. Like you may want to put a percent, like a 1 or 2% upfront that you get upfront, because normally there's also private lending. Usually, a lot of people, for example, will close the first 3 months up, or the first 6 months, depending on the length of the mortgage, because you also want to guarantee that you get a certain amount of money. So, for example, at least 3 months, you want to guarantee 3 months of interest. So you kind of say, okay, 3 months closed. And then afterwards, because you also want to realize the time you put into it, right? If you're putting time into like looking at the person's deal, that chit chat, so you want to, like, you don't want to, for example, do that and then it's done. And let's say you don't do a lender's fee, right? And then you just like they cash out in a month or something. That you want to also just make sure that you understand. Or I mean, you like the money makes sense for the work that you're doing. So one of the things people do is also you do like a first 3 months closed.
hmm And to put that more simply, what Diana is saying is that you don't want to write a check to someone or go through all this hassle. I went to the hassle, went to the bank, got a line of credit, yada, yada, yada. And then I just, I lent it to you and I'm hoping to make some good interest over the next, 4 to 5 months. And then I lend it to you, go through all that trouble, and then you actually pay it back to me in a month. And then I'm like, all that work I just did and I only made 1 month's interest, right? So you want to make sure that you're getting a couple months, so or at least 3 months, as Diana says, where you're like, you know what, you can afford this money, but um, for a minimum of 3 months. So I don't want it back early. Actually, one of my private lenders always tells me he gets sad when people pay him back his money.
Yeah. Well, because it's nice like that. Like another thing that I love, love, love about private lending, it's super passive, right? It's like a great, like if you, for example, have had bad experience with landlords, tenants, um, being the bank is like the next best thing, I would say, right? Because you don't have to deal with tenants calling you. You don't have to deal with any of the hassles of these kind of things, and you make money. Like
Yep.
you're totally 100% the bank, right? The bank doesn't care if the tenants aren't paying. They don't care if like a plumbing leak happens. right? So it's just like you do your due diligence at the very beginning, and just make sure that you do your due diligence. You make sure that it's an actual good deal that you want to lend to, and then and then it's just you don't really have to. All you're doing is once a month. You're just like, did my money come in? Okay, perfect.
That's it. That's it.
Other
Yeah.
things actually you may want to think about, for example, are penalty costs. So, for example, if someone does miss a payment, you have it in your contract saying that, if you miss your monthly payment, for example, you charge X amount of dollars, right? So that's another kind of way of,
Right.
getting some more money.
And then what if like you lent someone and you said, okay, I'm gonna lend you this money for 6 months, right? But then the 6 month comes and they want to extend or they don't have the money yet to, how do you handle something like that?
Yeah. So there's a few ways. I think obviously always communicating with them is important, like talking to them, understanding where they're at, what's going on is very important. And that's actually something even I feel like you should pay attention to, is if they are communicating to you or if you're having to communicate with them. Because I've had situations where I've had a private land and the term finished and they like disappeared, payments were happening, I'm waiting or I had to call them, and then it was like one of those, oh okay, and then they pay me, right? And then the next month there's no payment, and then I'm well off that I can withstand the payments, and then I'm just like, whatever, let them pay the penalties, I don't really care because I can withstand the payments. But it was just something, for example, for me, I will never lend to someone because it was me going after them being like, hey, where, like, why aren't the payments being done, like, and he was explaining what was going on, but it was me having to go to them, right?
Right.
And I'm
Yeah.
just kind of like, like, why am I having to do this work? So I feel
Yep.
like, whereas I had another, for example, person where I think like a month before, they're like, hey, I'm gonna need to continue for a few more months, and I'm doing this, and like he explained everything, and he just gave me the status report and what was going on, and that was like, that's different, right? Because
Yep.
you could see this person's organized, right? You can see
Right.
that this person knows what he's doing, and
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 they care that they owe you money. They have enough, the enough common sense
and
can
appreciate you,
and
right? Because
appreciation to message you like, hey, look, you lent me this money. We had a deal deadline. I'm not gonna make the deadline. Instead of someone going ghost on you and just like, hey, but I won't lend to that person again.
exactly, right? Like, and yeah, because it's just kind of like I have to communicate with you. Like I called him and he told me everything that was going on and explained, and I was like, okay, no problem. But I can tell you that I'm not going to do an extension because you just like, how are you just disappearing on me and me having to communicate with you, right? It's you should be letting me know. And like that, like for example, like fine, it doesn't have to be a month in advance. That was actually, I think it's just because he was planning out his projects, and he had a few more and he just wanted to like use that money for other projects now. And I was like, as long as I'm getting my money once a month, I'm good to go. I'm happy. Exactly. Like the longer it takes, I'm happier, right? I was like, the least amount of work I have to do, I'm happy, right? But then that's for the thing you want to do though, is you do want to do like a renewal, right? So you want to go and get the lawyer to renew it, and it's not that expensive. It's not as expensive as the first time because the mortgage is already placed on there. So it's just like a couple $100s, a few $100s to just re like redo the contract part of it.
Mhm.
Like extend the date basically is what you're doing.
Right. And now can I, what if they decide not to pay me when the deadline comes?
So you can talk to your lawyer about it, and like if you're wanting them, they like you want them to pay you out, right? Like
Yeah,
first of all, I mean, you
give me back my
tell
money pretty
them.
much.
So you would tell them that you want to pay them out, that you want to be paid out. And then you'll kind of go through like a foreclosure process, but you're not gonna, most likely you wouldn't go to, like, you're not gonna go that far, but you're gonna go through, I forget, like you send a letter. The first step is sending the letter, a formal letter saying that you want that money back.
Yep.
And and then and then it's like the planning process, right? Because then obviously they won't have the money at that time, but then you're kind of forcing them, like, you need to put it up on the market. Basically what you're doing is you're forcing them to go put it up on the market and start that process so that you can get your money back.
Right. So you have to initially let them know that they're in default of the contract, right?
Mhm.
And then you can give them a list of remedies and how to remedy the situation, right? And if that process is exhausted, then there's further steps, as you say, like into
Yeah.
foreclosure. Because
And the lawyer will give you that. The lawyer will tell you like what are your options. You should do it through the lawyer. I mean, you can write the letter yourself, but like you said, there's options out there. And so you want the lawyer to be involved. Because either way, and by the end of it, if depending on how far you get to it, your money gets all reimbursed. So
Mhm.
um, and that's a little thing also to think about is that if you do go through, like, let's say if you do go through, and I've never gone through a foreclosure process, so I don't know. But I have had to like send the letter in, and just to kind of get that process started of like, you need to go sell the house, like, let's get it done, you know. But
And
sorry, go on.
I would say, and this is why it's so important to analyze the deal from the front, right? Because if, for example, a property is worth $1 million, right? Um, the person had bank financing of $700,000, and you're gonna lend them up to 90% financing. So that means you're gonna lend them the additional $200,000. So you have like a 10% gap of equity where you're secure a bit. That is very tight, because if you ever end up in a situation where that person cannot pay you, you go through the foreclosure process. Now they didn't finish their renos, the place is in shambles, or the market went down from when they initially bought it. Now that property is worth $800,000. You might not even want to go into foreclosure, because now you're going to buy a property where you're going to be upside down from day one. Uh, because you could only sell it back for $800,000, where you have to give back the first lender their 700,000, and now you need to get back 200, but you can only get back 100, right? And then you're out of pocket $100,000 because you didn't analyze the deal, or you lent it too high of a loan to value, right? And those are the things that you have to learn how to analyze and how to set your criteria. Don't just be lending people on real estate because everyone thinks real estate is safe, right? There's certain situations that can happen where your money is at risk.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. And actually to add to that, because yeah, let's say for the novice, I would say probably stay under 80% loan to value. But other things to think about, even if you do go higher, there's actually, you do have a lot of options, right? Because um, for example, like if they have many properties, right? One of the things you do want to do, and again, your lawyer should advise you this is that you want them to be a guarantor, right?
Right.
And also, I forget the other one, but there's another one where it's kind of like if it's in a corporation, you can kind of go after their basically, you can go after their other assets as long as
Yeah.
either
If
they're personal guaranteeing, or if
yeah,
you're in their corporation, like if it's a corporation that the house is in that, and there's other houses, you can actually also use those other houses too. But again,
yeah,
obviously you have to know like how much equity is in all those houses and stuff. So yeah, you're right. Like if you're getting to the sense of your lending more money, you're obviously checking a lot more stuff. Like you're probably going to check like, what do these houses have? Like what are the equities like, right? Like is it
yeah,
worth it for me to pull, right? And let's say I decide for this house I'm going to do 100% loan to value. You may want to have others as collateral, right? So you may be like, okay, this one, I'm going to actually put a mortgage on these three properties to cover me, and let's say be at 80%, right? And
yeah.
then there's like two contracts. I just can't remember the name. There's one, being
There's
a guarantor, and
Yep.
there's another one that I just can't remember
Yeah.
what
So
it
there's
is.
blanket mortgage, right, on another property, or like, and it's all that is cross collateralization, right?
Mhm.
Where you can lend, like you said, 100% on a property, because not you're not only investing in the property or trusting the property or the deal, you're also trusting the investor, right? Because if this is a person that is turning out profit and profit after time, right? Plus they have a lot of assets behind them, right? Sometimes you can take a little higher risk up front, but you're still gonna protect yourself no matter what, right? And what's the first rule of investing? Protect your capital, right?
Protect your capital,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. You don't want to think lightly when it comes to your money. You do want to, because there is a lot of risk out there. Probably talking about risk is actually, or actually talking about the different, because there's so many different types of private lending that can be done. Or I should say different types of houses that you can lend to. And I can even say which ones I personally like to lend to. So there's actually, I don't lend to these kinds, because I don't really know that much about it. But for example, there are private lenders out there that will lend to, for example, people that are self-employed, right? There's actual lenders that lend to them because they can't get traditional mortgages, um, but they make good incomes, right? And because they have their own businesses or whatever. So that's like, there's that type of lending. There's also lending, just for example, tenanted properties, where same thing, a lot of us, for example, are self-employed, and we have, properties we tenant that we have tenants in, and so a lot of people will lend to that, and that's two different types of lending to people, right? Like being self-employed meaning in the sense that you're not a real estate investor, but you have a business, and so you need money for your like primary residence, or you may even have a secondary residence, but you're not a real estate investor, right? But then there's other, so that's like actually one kind of private lending that people like to do. Then there's others, for example, with tenanted properties, where they are real estate investors, they have a lot of properties under them, or they have a few, and like, or they have probably a lot, right? Because they're self-employed, and like they're probably their full time is real estate investing, or they have a job but they've maxed themselves out, right? And then they need to go into the private side. So then that's the other one. The ones that I personally like to do, and it's probably just because of my husband, he's a contractor and I understand that side very well, is I like to lend to value add properties. So burrs or flips are my favorite kind of properties to lend to, because they're buying it undervalued already, and you're going at 80%, or maybe you go to 100, because I've done some that they've had like amazing deals. They got such an amazing deal that I even loaned like the full purchase price. um but it's almost like, yeah, you have to do some like demoing, but really it's almost like you're just going up, like it's like, especially the really, really terrible ones. Like I like the ones that are like a disaster, like the whole thing just needs to be torn up, because it's like you're already basically paying like such a low value for it that you can
Yeah.
only really go up, right? So
Yeah.
those are personally the ones that I like to lend to, just because I feel like you can't really go down anymore. It's
Mhm.
all you can really do is go up.
Right.
So those are the ones off the top of my head, at least, that I can remember.
And
Those.
you automatically already know when you're gonna get your money, right? Because you know it's either gonna be at the end of the flip or on the refinance, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or even like tenanted ones, usually. Like tenanted ones, they'll always, for example, guarantee um those are usually 1 year ones, right?
Hmm.
Those are 1 year, 2 years, actually, depending on, actually they may even do 2 or 3 years, like traditional mortgages, because they know they're gonna have to stay private. When you're going into the burrs or the flips, like I feel like if a flip is more than a year, like if they're asking for more than a year, I mean, you really have to understand what that project is about to
Yep.
be able to because I feel like it's strange if a project takes more than a year. But again, that doesn't mean that doesn't happen. I'm just saying, especially if you're a novice, you will really, or not even novice, but you just have to ask questions and really understand why it's taking longer than a year. Because I feel like, I mean, now all 6 month projects I feel like people are now doing the 1 years, just because of like material delays and stuff. But, but I feel like the 1 year mark is still like what it is for like burrs and flips.
Yeah.
Max.
Yeah, man.
Any other questions?
I think that's all I can think of right now. I think we've given enough information. If at least someone wants to get into
Yeah.
private lending, they would know where to start and kind of what the things that they need to research some more.
And I think actually another thing, one last thing that I would say that I find very important for people is when you're thinking about lending this money, I would say, yeah, are you willing to let that money disappear for 5 years? And the reason I say that is one, you'll become obsessed with it and you're going to love it and you want to just keep on lending your money out, right? So you kind of want to make sure this money isn't, for example, for like your day to day living where you're going to need to bring it back. Because imagine you lend it out for a year and at the 6 month mark, I'm like, I need to pay all these bills and all this stuff and I don't have my money, right? So I say 5 years for that. Also for the purpose that a foreclosure will never be 5 years. It wouldn't, I don't think it ever takes that long. But if you have to go through the process of a foreclosure, you in general, if you make a good decision on how to lend out your money, which again, mortgage brokers will definitely help you out and you yourself should do some learning on it. But for sure the money will come back within those 5 years. And so I think I like that 5 year mark for those two reasons too. It's just kind of um helps you really forget about that money and let it go. Because like that, like you're going to love passive money coming in when you don't have to do anything.
Yep.
And it's just going to get to a point where you're just like, to be honest, you're like, oh, where else can I pull money out of and
Yeah.
just send it out, right? So I always just say like make sure it's money that it doesn't impact you, that extra money, like you have your contingency money saved, and then you may have a little even extra on top of that, and then that other money where it's just like, it's, for example, maybe in stocks or something, like this kind of money where it's just like you're never going to look at it again for a while and you don't care about it. That's the kind of money that you want to be lending out. Because I have seen people that will kind of put like all their money in, and situations will always come up like that. Some people won't think of like they need contingency money and they're stretching themselves super thin.
Yeah.
So I just also kind of ask yourself that question: can I live without it for 5 years?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Alrighty. Good
So
stuff.
any final tips for the viewers on private lending or our initial topic of every decision you make in business has a financial consequence? Any final tip?
Yeah, just as usual, just be very diligent about your finances. Make great spending decisions. Don't just spend out there and don't just lend out there, right? Because
Mhm.
there is risk involved with all kinds of investing, and there's always risk when you're spending anything anyway. So just everyone just be mindful of their financing and their spending.
Yeah. And I'll say the final thing we didn't really get to touch much upon, but look into, and again, when you're maybe talking to a mortgage broker, or even if you talk to like someone like me, someone who has experience, you want to also understand your risk tolerance because everyone is different and everyone's situations are different. And so understanding your risk tolerance is very important because it helps you decide what kind of private lending you want to do also, which we didn't get to talk about very much. So I would say get on looking at that, figure out what your risk tolerance is.
For sure. Mhm.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Randy.
No
Always for
problem.
chatting with me on this. It's always, I know you have a lot of fun. I always have a lot of fun. It's our passion. So thanks so much. And thank you, everyone. And we hope to see you at the next episode. Bye, everyone. Bye, Randy.
Bye. See you, Diana.